Hi, this is a book review. First of all, this is Mel Feuerman, your favorite reviewer. And I'm going to give a little video review of a very fine book by Mr. Hold it up again, James Comey, A Higher Loyalty. I picked it up at Barnes & Noble a couple of weeks ago for 15 bucks. I wanted to show Mr. Comey in some way that I really appreciated the work he's doing for our country. So often part of that 15 bucks goes to Mr. Comey. So it's a great book, but it's a little bit like a Chinese meal, Chinese food. Because after you read it, you want more. You want more. Every page is delicious. And but really, it's very, very brief. You know, the first part of the book is very, very unusual. It's almost as if Comey was on the therapist's couch and he had a need to explain some of the things that affected him deeply in his childhood. And one of them had to do with the Ramsey rapist. And when he was a very young boy, he went through a very traumatic experience, and his brother as well. He thought he was going to die because of this rapist was prowling around, captured Comey and his brother in a bedroom, and they didn't know whether they were going to live or die. And that had a profound experience on him. Another thing that influenced Comey in his life was bullying. And apparently he was bullied when he was a young boy at different parts of his life in school. And that really weighed on him. And I don't think he shared that with his family. And then the other thing is lying, which on occasion he confesses that he lied to some of his friends in high school or in college. So the early part of this book, it's like a tell-it-all, things that are really bothering Comey. And then, for example, when he went to William and Mary College, he was involved in bullying a boy himself, bullying a fellow student. And he carried that guilt around with him, and he finally apologized. So this sort of a hair shirt kind of feeling reading this book. He wants to get everything out. You know, before tackling Trump and Bush, explaining all of that, he wants to make sure that he's not a perfect person and that he also had to apologize. So I was very impressed with that. And the book is also about leadership, Comey's vision of what is a good leader, which basically means listening to people and not using your power and having a sense of humor and being courageous and being a role model. That's all in the book as well. And it's very interesting to read. And I really admire Comey for talking about these issues. And he's really a good man. Most of it's about his career as a prosecutor. He wasn't a career prosecutor, but he was involved in, I say, 2 or 3 big cases. Maybe 4. Prosecuting Martha Stewart was one. Then there was a lot of Cosa Nostra and Mafia dons he took on as a lawyer. There's also a retelling of the story of how Comey and Mueller stood up to Cheney and his lawyers to prevent the reauthorization of some wiretapping laws that the Comey felt were unconstitutional, and how the scenario played out where Cheney's lawyers were going to, and Andrew Card, Bush's chief of staff, went to see Ashcroft in the hospital. He went to the hospital to have Ashcroft sign off on the wiretapping extension, and he wouldn't sign it. And he pointed to Comey, and Comey's in charge, and Comey wouldn't sign it. So that was sort of a heroic, and also he had Robert Mueller was helping Comey get this done. So that was a very interesting part of his career. The other big issue that Comey faced or worked on in the Bush administration was torture or enhanced interrogation techniques. And apparently the Justice Department at that one time ruled that torture or enhanced interrogation techniques were okay. So on that score, I have to again give Comey credit for trying to bring to light the issue of torture, the interrogation techniques, but he was on the way out, so there wasn't a hell of a lot he could do. But he tried his best. There's quite a lot of amusing material in the book, and it talks about Giuliani being a real showboat and taking all the oxygen out of a room. He makes a big point about that. Even though Giuliani hired him, he takes a good couple of shots at Giuliani and his ego. Of course, Giuliani is now repaying Comey during the Trump controversy about collusion. Giuliani called Comey a pervert. Can you imagine? And then there's an interesting section about the Clinton emails. And of course, we all know about the Clinton emails, the possible effect it had on the election. But there's a nice little tidbit about when I don't think Hillary liked Comey to begin with, because they have a sort of a history that goes back a lot of years. It turns out in the book that Comey tells us that his first job after law school was working on the Watergate case. Not the Watergate, the whatever the Clinton thing was, Whitewater. He was involved with the Whitewater case as a junior lawyer, and basically his job was to look into the Vincent. Did Vincent commit suicide or not? That lawyer friend of theirs. And then much later, in the Bush White House, Comey was involved in looking at the pardon that Bush gave to Mark Rich, because Mark Rich's wife contributed money to the Clinton Foundation or some party, so they were trying to figure out whether there was any quid pro quo for that donation that Mark Rich's wife made. So Comey thinks that Hillary didn't like him. And then at one point, Comey was Attorney General from New York, just an attorney from New York, and Hillary was senator, and he tried to meet her, talk shop and the issues related to New York, and Hillary avoided speaking with him. So Comey came to the conclusion that Hillary was not a fan of his, and certainly she wasn't a fan of his during the email investigation. So that's a little tidbit that's in the book, which is fascinating. I found very fascinating. Of course, everybody is reading this book because of Trump. And the funny thing about reading this book, you don't really know if Trump is guilty of anything, except poor manners, stupidity, ignorance, and asking Comey to do some special favors for Flynn. And that being secretive and opening his big mouth and, wanting the special treatment by the FBI. So after reading this book, Trump's a real jerk and a a-hole. But even Comey says he doesn't know whether the president is guilty of anything. So I recommend the book. It's full of a lot of interesting gossip and historical information. But the case is still open. So you don't know what's going to happen here. So I think we need a second book. There were no pictures of Comey's family. Or I understand he's a foster parent. He's a real mensch, in other words. And I'd love to read more about you, Jim. And you'd be a great candidate for president. And shalom, and have a nice day, everybody.